skies. Tattered flags waving dreams in our eyes. The crowds roar like a storm on the wind. We're the underdogs fighting again.
Hey guys, good evening and welcome to another edition of Stateside Footy. God damn it. Every time I see that the end of that intro where Jermaine Jones is scoring goals for the U.S. men's national team, I don't know, something comes over me because I totally wish we had like 3 Jermaine Joneses on the squad right now. But that's a different story for a different day. Anyways, good evening and welcome to the show. And God damn it, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons because we are on a race to 1,000 subs in this channel. Actually, this channel is actually growing quite nicely over the last couple of months, so I do want to thank you guys for doing that. Tonight, the return of Jeff Lageson from Prost International. Jeff, good evening. How you doing?
I'm still enjoying Sunday night. Like Brian gave him 5 days off, so I'm still enjoying the 5 days off myself. So
well, I would hope he gave him 5 days off, considering it's the international break. But and also one of their own late addition to the U.S. men's national team, CR7 joins the national team, and of course there was a lot of people that were actually quite pissed off that Christian Roldan was added to the national team. It's like, well, here's the thing, though, right? Considering that Pochettino has made an effort to include some MLS guys, Christian Roldan's kind of like the best center mid in the league right now.
Well, a big thing about a guy like Christian is he gives you exactly what you want, and he's a veteran. When teams roll up onto World Cups, it's not uncommon to see coaches start looking at who's going to be at the end of the bench that can handle being on the end of the bench and give them something that maybe can handle not playing. And a guy like Christian, who's been there, who's been around, can understand that his role might be to go in as a sub for 2 games, spot start, and handle it. And so a lot of times you see those veteran guys take up those last spots, and this is exactly the sort of move that I can see them doing.
Yeah, and you know, I actually think it's kind of a worthy inclusion. Now, this isn't just me being like an MLS honk or anything like that. But that being said, it's like, you know, the proof is in the pudding when you actually see the leadership and the effort that Christian has put in, specifically this last final against Inter Miami, and you actually see the quality and you see you see the effort put in. It's like, you know, you're kind of wondering why he was left off the Gold Cup squad. Because you would think that would have been a natural selection for the Gold Cup squad over a guy like Jack McGlynn, who's good, but Christian's played better, or a guy like Sebastian Berhalter. But that being said, you know, he finally makes the inclusion on it, and I guess this is an opportunity against quality opponents, South Korea and Japan.
Roldan's the sort of guy that if he plays for your club, you totally appreciate him because you watch him match in and match out. Yeah. You're sitting there from the stands and you see everything that he brings. You don't see him on the score sheet much. And you see that around world football. Like there's those players where people are like, why is that guy so well regarded? And then you watch him for 5-6 games as a supporter and you go, oh. And Roldan has that sort of just consistent quality of bringing it every match. And you don't see him be the reason bad things happen. You know, he's steady, he's consistent, he's present at every match, he knows his role. He's capable of stepping up and leading. He just captained a team to a 3-0 win over Inter Miami and Messi and all those World Cup players. I'm not sure what more you have to do to show that you're a quality player and leader than that. Results matter.
We are gonna get into Christian in a bit, but as mentioned at the top of the show, the Sounders won the 3rd edition of Leagues Cup, and I still don't really know the importance of Leagues Cup yet, just considering the Mexican opposition of the side, the fact that they have to travel. They don't get to play in front of their fans, and because of it, yes, their A teams have to travel. But that being said, their A teams come. But that being said, do they necessarily really care? This edition, we saw the Sounders drop 7 on Cruz Azul. We saw other sides have lopsided losses, and you wonder whether or not they actually take this tournament necessarily seriously, considering they're at the beginning of the schedule. Whereas CONCACAF Champions League, we're at the beginning of our schedule, and we definitely take it seriously. But that being said, the Sounders win it nonetheless, and it's still a major piece of trophy, really, at the end of the day. It is a massive piece of trophy. And for the Sounders, this makes 9 trophies as an MLS club. And they're the first team in Major League Soccer to win every piece of major silverware there can be won in North America. And of course, we're talking about 4 U.S. Open Cup titles, a Supporter Shield, 2 MLS titles, CONCACAF Champions League in 2022, and now Leagues Cup in 2025. So the first question I have to throw to you is, over the last couple days, the conversations have been, who is actual MLS royalty? Because if you remember, there was a time where the LA Galaxy was wearing every single piece of silverware. But that being said, it was what I would consider that was pre-expansion Major League Soccer. Right? Where I think at most there might have been 15 teams in the league. And there was a point where it was only 10 at one point, right? But that being said, I guess you have to give credit to Bruce Arena and the LA Galaxy for winning all that hardware. But that being said, in the era of 30 MLS teams, I guess that we have to ask that first question, like, who's the true royalty of Major League Soccer based on Trophy Hall?
Well, and the Trophy Hall isn't just there was a surge of 2 or 3 years where they were really, really good. This is expansion year 09, 10, 11, Open Cup wins. 5 years in, they're still winning another Open Cup, and they're getting their Supporter Shield. A few more years, they get a run where they get like 3 MLS Cup appearances and win a couple of them. Now they're getting the international tournaments and winning them on top of it, and they're still making the playoffs every year. It's like one season where they barely missed the postseason out of all of this, and they've almost clinched a playoff spot again already. I don't know what more you have to do than just consistently be up there and win. It's the sort of thing that if you look around to leagues around the world, those are the top tier teams. They're the teams that set the bar. And we know who those are wherever you go. And if Seattle's not included in that conversation, you're just not paying attention, because they are winning all the trophies, and they're winning them on a consistent basis with new players rolling in here and there. They're developing players in the process. They're playing every couple of years. They've got finals. Those 9 trophies also include an MLS Cup final they didn't win, another national tournament they didn't win, and a 5th Open Cup appearance. Those 4 Open Cups are tied for the most of anybody. And if they get if they're the first 1 to 5, they tie the all-time record going back to like the Bethlehem Steel of the 1920s and 30s type of thing. And so you're talking about a team that does set a historic bar in the league. And yes, LA has the resume, and they won it last year. So they're still in that conversation, but Seattle has done something nobody else has done. That's win them all.
The interesting thing is, like, when you look at the consistency in the MLS era. Now, by the way, like, if you really want to talk about consistency, they were good pre-MLS as well too. In their runs in the U.S. Open Cup, and there are also championships in the USL as well too. I mean, at one point they were an MLS team in the USL at one point, as you brought up earlier, which is a very good point. But that being said, the model of consistency of this franchise, and when they started in 2009, being an expansion team to make the playoffs, winning an Open Cup. And then, of course, I think they won 3 straight at the beginning of their era. And essentially just being a quintessential playoff team as rosters changed, as managers changed, from Siggy Schmidt to Brian Schmetzer. And you just look at the model of consistency. And what's interesting about this, what's gotten me fascinated and has gotten me fired up about this season specifically is the injuries and the fact that we're missing key components of this team. Jordan Morris can't stay healthy, and then all of a sudden, Danny Musovsky checks in, and then he catches a red card in the quarterfinal, and then he's out for the semifinal and the final, and they continue to roll. They lose João Paulo out, and it doesn't seem to matter. Obed Vargas just steps in, and it's like, whatever, okay, like that's like, yeah, it sucks, but whatever, we have cover. And it just seems like it just really does feel like there's just a next man up philosophy with this team that can't be overlooked, because what's interesting about it is whether Senators fans want to believe this or not, like the roster has changed over from that 5-year stretch from 2016 to 2020 when we were competing for MLS Cups. The roster's changed over, and now when you look at this again, where you're kind of just looking at this roster, kind of scratching your head like, how the hell did we win Leagues Cup with injuries? We lose Paul Arriola. Jesus Ferreira wasn't really all that great to start the season, yet he's playing in the 10 role because Albert Rusnik goes down. We lose Danny Musovsky, and now all of a sudden we have Dwayne De Rosario's kid is now playing up front, and it's like it boggles my mind that it's like even 2 of those injuries will sink a team. Will sink a team for a good portion of the season, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, whatever. We just
in the 2 months, just over 2 months since they played in the FIFA Club World Cup, they've played 15 matches and lost 1. They played 5 players under the age of 25 in the starting 11 against Inter Miami with their 3 World Cup winners, and the backup goalkeeper clean sheeted them and won 3-0.
Clean sheeted them, yeah.
Like seriously, I mean, it's like clean sheet, 3-0, exclamation point ending. And it was a good chunk of guys you would have thought was their depth starting.
Right. Yeah.
Stephen Fry was ready to go, but he let this be Thomas's tournament. It was like he got him there, he got the start. And I really respect how he didn't succumb to the nervousness of going back to the veterans. Like, that was the guys that got him there, and he gave them their chance to go out there. And if you look, you see a couple of the veterans all in their pennies ready to go. Yeah. But the kids are all right.
Like, I thought we were going to see Albert at some point. He was on the bench, and he was like, I went into that live stream thinking to myself, yeah, like maybe in the 75th minute for the last 15 minutes, Albert would get in just for the sake of minutes, just to kind of get his feet back under him. Danny Leyva stepped in. Mm-hmm. And it was like there was no drop off.
I love that he got to give a curtain call to Paul Rothrock in stoppage.
Yeah.
The legend of Paul Rothrock, nice. With the whole thing with the trolling them with the Messi jersey exchange. You know, turn in your Messi jersey, get a Paul Rothrock jersey at the team shop before the match. They had so much fun with that. But part of it is, and I think this gets back to Brian's own DNA. He was the 17, 18-year-old drafted by the NASL Sounders and brought in and given a chance that by the time he was that age, he was a part of the side that was going to the 82 Soccer Bowl and things like that. So I do think that he understands that because he was that himself. Mm. And so when the kids, people, these players that are 20 but have been pros already for a couple of years. I think there was a match a few years ago where he started 5 teenagers. Schmitzer has and he doesn't change what he does.
Nope.
They don't change their basic principles. They're too deep at every spot. Their outside back took the penalty. How often does your right back step up to be your main penalty taker in a situation like that, right?
In a final, nonetheless. Yeah, Alex Roldan. That's a very good point. When Christian gave the ball to his brother, I'm like, oh shit! Like, what are we doing here?
It's such a Ted Lasso moment too. It was just like it's just one of those things where, and he takes a nice penalty. He doesn't do any of that stutter step crap.
Oh yeah.
He just stepped up, hit the ball low, hit the ball wide, and drilled it to the far corner. and then trotted over and got pig piled in the corner, as one does. And it was exactly what you want out of a penalty. He showed no nerves on it. And you just have to respect the fact that nobody on the Sounders looked surprised or upset that it was him. Like, you
Yeah.
didn't see the other
Yeah.
guys going, "Oh man, why is he doing, like, give it to me." It was just, no, Alex is up.
Yeah.
Go get it, man.
The most impressive thing about the Leagues Cup victory for me wasn't Alex Roldan having, essentially getting a goal and 2 assists on the night. He was phenomenal. That wasn't the impressive thing. The impressive thing was how they literally shut down Messi for a good portion of that match. And I came into it thinking like the two biggest players were going to be Obed Vargas and Christian Roldan, and making sure that that space that's occupied right in front of the 18-yard box, the area where Messi generally likes to start picking teams apart. Because if teams don't high press Miami, what ends up happening is they end up occupying that space, and they like to attack vertically. So it's 1-2 passes, and then all of a sudden you see runs into the box.
Yeah,
Right
your
from those
six has
central
got to
areas.
have his A game going at that point.
And for a large portion, Christian Roldan was a blanket on Messi. And if it wasn't Roldan, it was Obed Vargas. And it was to the point where Miami was pressed to the wings for a good portion of that. And then, of course, and Seattle's, credit to Seattle's fullbacks, because their 1v1 defending on the outside was absolutely brilliant. Jordi Alba was not pinging balls into the box at all. Outside of like right at the start of the second half, where Messi found his way into the box and missed one, and then Alande missed one. Outside of those two, and by the way, it was the Alande goal that was the most shambolic of the miss was shambolic. That was the most shambolic moment of the match. You cut in and out, you have the goalkeeper beat and you push it wide right for the post. But outside of those two moments right there, Seattle did not let Miami play their game at all. And I thought, me personally, I thought those two players were Obed Vargas and Christian Roldan were the most influential players of the match, because they were the one that was tasked, if they could, man marking Messi out of the match.
And that, I have a feeling that Pochettino saw the same thing you did, which explains where Christian is this weekend. So, because he saw the same thing you did. And that's, again, gets us back to, that's the sort of thing you appreciate when you see a player play over time. Like, you can look for what they bring and what they do. And that's such a thankless position, playing that sixth spot in front of the defense, especially when you have a player that every team can play through the way that Messi's able to just drift in and out of your offense. He can make your defense look silly because all of a sudden you lose track of him for 35 seconds and he is somewhere you don't know and wide open and he scores. And it's amazing to be able to, they had to tag team it, which was smart, but they also managed over the course of that match to really make it clear that Seattle outplayed them.
Yeah.
Like, they were the better
from start
team over 90 minutes. They got the goal in the first half in what was a very nice sequence. It was great to see Pedro get player of the tournament, because we got to see De La Vega really step up in this tournament. And I want to get back at some point. We need to talk about that goal from earlier in the tournament, that Puskás Award future nominee goal he got. And I just feel like Brian's ability as a coach to just keep an even keel and have a sense that they all know what they're going to do. They're all professionals. Go do your job. You may not be a name, but you're a professional here for a reason. And I don't always think that gets taken into account in media and in fan circles. Is these guys are training every day. Like, they know what they're supposed to do. They're professional athletes, and you just don't necessarily know who they are if you don't follow a team from week to week to week to week. But it doesn't mean that they're not there and ready to go, and they didn't get there on accident. And when they get a chance to step up in an environment that nurtures that, you see what we get here in Seattle, which is 9 trophies.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that, we got to talk real quick about Jesus Ferreira, because that first goal was a direct result of Jesus Ferreira attacking centrally and then playing a dynamite ball to Alex Roldan that got put in as Ozazi made it 1-0. how important has Jesus Ferreira been for Brian Schmetzer from essentially like May to like now?
I think
Because of the injuries, he was kind of forced to play in a different role because in the early portion of the season he was kind of finding some time on the right side, but he didn't necessarily have a role. And it seems like over the course of the last couple of months, he's kind of played almost that Swiss Army knife role where it's like he can occupy different positions if you need him. But for whatever reason, it seems like since Albert's been out, he stepped into that 10 position and has played brilliantly.
Well, I think that what's important with Jesus, and we have to look at, is what we thought we were going to get from Jesus Ferreira this year, and what we had hoped that we would get when we were looking at this in January, February, was the goal-scoring striker.
Yeah.
But
Right.
his game is more diverse than that, and he's enough of a multifaceted player that they could plug him around. And I think that some of the lack of stats make it look like he's been disappointing. But if you see him in what he's brought, that sequence is very much. It's what Messi tries to do with Miami, right? Come through the middle, create the thing, get the ball wide, make a run, and the run by Di Rosario on the far post itself was so well timed. That tracking runner in behind the play coming across, you just see the Miami defenders all looking like, where did he come from?
Right.
After the play, that trailing runner coming on the far post.
Just attacking channels. It was beautiful. That was
it is everything you want. If you ever just break down and start drawing diagrams, they do on that sequence.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of De Rosario, but I think he's just raw. Now that doesn't mean in 5 years that I won't. It's just in a final like that, you're like, God damn it, Muzazi. You know what I mean? It's like you take a bad red in the quarterfinals, and it's like now our striker is Ozaze, and it's like, okay. Like I've seen Ozaze play enough to be like, oh, this dude is raw.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can see the ceiling, but it's raw. And it's like, man, when you're going up against better teams and you're just wondering whether or not he's going to be able to pull something like that off. Sure enough. But then again, Miami's kind of suspect to begin with anyway. Yes, they have amazing attacking players, right? That's what they spent on. But that being said, if anybody was paying attention last year in the playoffs against Atlanta, their back line is kind of suspect.
They're a top-heavy roster that's not deep.
That's not deep, yeah. Exactly.
Seattle is a deep roster that could use another piece or two that they had hoped would be Ferreira and De La Vega. Now, Ferreira's play in this tournament, De La Vega's in this tournament, but even still, they weren't the sort of, superstar type thing that you would expect of them, but they were the guys they needed them to be in this. They needed them to be. And if you listen to some of the broadcast afterwards, it was, rewarded patience with De La Vega and all these different things. But they have a way that they do things, and they are prepared for matches. And when guys come in, they don't sit there and go, just don't screw up. They just do what they do. And that isn't as sexy as some of the roster moves they could make, but winning is fun. Trophies are cool. 70,000 people partying in Seattle on Sunday night on Labor Day weekend was pretty rocking. So,
dude, it's nice when the stadium is open like that.
It looks so good. It looks
considering that even against top opponents from Liga MX in earlier portions of that tournament, or even MLS regular season contests, like the lower bowl looks kind of deserted, right? So there's never really an open type of stadium for those type of games. But when you get to a final like that and the entire city is rocking, and they're filled out, that place becomes one of the best home field advantages, not just in MLS, but also in world football as well too. It's actually quite a sight, which gets me kind of fired up for the World Cup this upcoming summer. But that's different story for a different day. Listen, here's the interesting thing about this one is I said it right at the beginning of the live stream for the Leagues Cup, that final. Like, this was an opportunity for both teams, not just Seattle, but also for Miami, depending on who was going to be able to win this match. This would be the first step to what could be a double. because both teams have the capable of pulling off the double.
Mhm.
One of the things about Major League Soccer is I don't think a treble is possible, just because I don't think rosters are really all that deep to pull off the CONCACAF Champions League, Leagues Cup, MLS Cup treble. And I think it would take a serious team to be able to wade those waters. And now that Leagues Cup is now a fixture, those that are competing in it don't necessarily compete in the U.S. Open Cup. It's those that don't qualify for League Cup are in it, and it's usually the Sounders. It's usually the Tacoma Defiance that are going to be playing in the Open Cup. So trying to pull off a quad is going to be impossible, right? Or a treble with the U.S. Open Cup if you count the Defiance winning it or something like that. But that being said, a double is very achievable, and I think the Sounders just put everyone on alert that they're going to be capable of it, because when you look at the roster today, and when you look at this roster towards the end of the season before we hit MLS Cup playoffs, we're gonna get Jordan back.
Mm-hmm.
Albert's going to be back, and this team is going to be looking like it's going to be hitting the playoffs at full strength.
Now, they're actually going to be healthier potentially at the end of the season than they are now, which is weird.
Correct.
And
Correct.
I believe João Paulo even has a chance of being eligible coming off the bench late for that too. Like there was some talk that it was just some cartilage and not a full. Like he didn't have a full tear. Seattle absolutely does. They're in a position where they can also divvy up their minutes in a good way because they're almost clinched already anyway. So it's like he can definitely manage his roster and appearances and minutes on guys and get take those things into account, because they're not going to have to win. They're I think it's something like 8 or 9 more points and they clinch. And that's 8 or 9 more points, including if teams below them in those situations drop. Like if the teams in those lower spots drop, like they could clinch in 2 games. And then you start just setting yourself up for position and rotation and health. And so you take into account the Cascadia Cup still has some stuff happening in the middle of it to keep your team sharp. Although that whole Cascadia Cup for them depends on a match that happens before they get to play in their next 2, because if Vancouver beats Portland, it's done. If Portland beats Vancouver, Seattle wins out, they win the cup. So they may still have a chance to grab a Cascadia Cup too. The Supporter Shield's out. They're just too far down. But they have a very real chance of setting themselves up and being the sort of team that's already a little bit tested. They've played these elimination matches. They've been toughened up by playing Atletico Madrid and Paris Saint-Germain this year. They've gone out and beaten a team like Miami already in elimination and in a final if they have to face a good team like that in the postseason. And I'm not convinced that anybody above them in the Western Conference is really any better than them. I mean, they've had more points, but Seattle's played a comically absurd number of games for a professional club in 2025. They played so many games. Correct. Champions League, Leagues Cup, and then they tack on 3 more games in the middle of it because they keep winning.
Right.
15 matches since the end of June. They have played too much football, and yet here they are still looking like a team that could make a run. I wouldn't want to play them in the postseason.
And especially when they get healthy, and if they catch form. And all of a sudden, not only did Seattle look deep making a run through the Leagues Cup, and now all of a sudden they're probably the deepest team heading into MLS Cup playoffs. And by the way, and if they finish kind of in that 4th position, who's 5 right now? You know what I mean? Like who's it's like that's going to be their first round matchup, and then all of a sudden, Seattle's pretty goddamn good when it comes to knockout soccer. So
I think they have as good a chance as any at that point. They're a team that I have more confidence in than worries about, simply because they've already shown they can this year. This team has already done that. They've shown this team has shown they can. And then it's a little bit the luck of one-offs. Like one-off games, you play that elimination game, 5 bad minutes or 5 great minutes, and suddenly you're through or out. So I do like their chances in those matches too, especially when they can bring a Morris in the 75th minute and give him a run late in the game if it's close, and suddenly you have
Yep.
a guy like that who's just a target and a bull in a china shop when he goes in, runs through the middle.
Correct.
Um,
Correct.
your defenses aren't going to be very happy to see him come clambering through the middle of the field late in a game like that in November. So I do like the notion of it. Winning multiple trophies in a single season in MLS. I mean, Seattle, I think in 14 was a double. I think they got the Open Cup and the Supporter Shield that year.
Correct.
And so doubles in themselves are great.
Sure.
But trebles and
But
stuff, no.
yeah, I just don't think MLS rosters are built for trebles. But that being said, I mean, you would have to navigate the entire season essentially injury free.
Yeah, you'd have to have a ridiculous level of luck.
Right.
Yeah.
But what would that mean for a guy like Brian Schmetzer in a season like this to pull off something like that? Because what's interesting about it is like you and I realize how good the Sounders are because we're supporters, right? But it almost feels like Seattle is that forgotten team in the Western Conference because we've been it's odd to me because as you eloquently put it just a few minutes ago, that consistency has been a model of this franchise. It's what every other franchise wish they were. From the very beginning, Seattle has always been that quintessential playoff team, that champion. They've won everything there is to win, and yet they still seem to get overlooked in the, I guess you can say, in the national soccer.
And I think they're happy about that.
I would probably assume they are too.
In the office, I think they're very happy to fly under that radar a little bit. I mean, all the leagues want their LAs and New Yorks and Miamis and Chicagos to be their glamour teams, and the Galaxy have generally been that. But Seattle brings so many positive things to the table for MLS. They're part of the best rivalry in the league. They're part of one of the better marketed teams in the league. From the business side of things, you look at the way in which they're marketed. They're a team that players want to come and sign for. It doesn't seem like getting players to sign here that they want. They don't get picked. They get picked by players want to come here, right? Because players like to go where there's fans and supporters and money and wins and win trophies. And if you come to Seattle and you play for 3-4 years, you're going to get at least something.
You're going to get something.
Yeah, and you're going to get a chance to play for stuff every year. And that is and Brian has never really gotten in any point in time the credit. And he's been the USL coach, the assistant coach thing for 24 years. And he's been a part of every single one of those trophies. He was the head coach of the USL team that won those trophies and made those Open Cup runs. He was assistant coach in the early MLS clubs. He's been the head coach in the MLS Cups and the international runs. And at some point in time,
he should be. He's like my question is why hasn't U.S. Soccer tapped him as the next head coch instead of the Greg Berhalters of the world, or like trying to pimp out Steve Cherundolo because he's with the glamour team LAFC. But that being said, it's like he's been a consistent winner his entire career.
And that goes back
to the trophies that his trophy haul. Like what's funny, it's like even when he was the assistant to Siggy, he still is credited with those 4 U.S. Open Cups and the Supporter Shield. He was still a part of it.
Here's what's even crazier. In the 90s, he was Fernando Clavio's assistant when the Seattle Sea Dogs won the Indoor League title.
I remember the Sea Dogs.
They won the last CISL title in 97. He was Clavio's assistant. So it goes all the way back. But he was also, as a young player, he was part of the Alan Hinton team that went to the 82 Soccer Bowl. He grew up in a winning environment around the Alan Hudsons and the Steve Buttles and those sorts of guys. And I just think it always rubbed off. He ended up in the MISL with the San Diego soccer teams that were dominant. He comes back here, he does all that. His whole career has always been in those
Yeah.
environments. And I just feel like I don't think it's a coincidence that that's what he tries to create as his environment.
I always thought it's because he was always looked at as Siggy's boy,
Mhm.
right? And there was some kind of disconnect between U.S. Soccer and Siggy Schmidt, at least when it came to the national team, the senior national team. I'm not talking about the youth teams, right? When
Right.
it came to the top job. But that being said, it's like, you know, obviously, U.S. Soccer wants an American head coach to run the national team, and they want obviously they want some connection to Major League Soccer, which is not a secret, because obviously the national team essentially has been co-opted by Major League Soccer. Okay, fine. So why don't you go get the best goddamn coach in Major League Soccer?
And here's the thing. I think Schmetzer
And
would
by the
take
way,
the
he would be
job.
really good. I think his coaching style actually would actually be very good for the international game.
No, I think that a lot of the players would like playing for him. He treats them like he just flat out tells them, like, if you don't do the effort, you won't play. I don't care who you are.
Yeah,
And that just matter of fact, and he lives up to it. He puts stars on the bench.
yeah,
He is not afraid to bench names, and he's not afraid to start teenagers and
yep.
give it a run. And I do think that I think that a lot of the national team players would respect that because they just see that trophy haul, and that is respected by players winning.
Yeah.
Guy comes in, he's got rings, he's got and he's just like, and we're just going to be here, we're going to create this environment, and we're going to go. And if you're ready to go, you're going to be my guy. His
Yeah.
teams play attacking soccer generally. They
Yeah.
defend hard. They will come at you from the wing. They'll come at you from the 9. They will use a target striker if they need to go long. You look at the Rosnak to De La Vega goal, was that long through ball from the
Yep.
midfielder to a wing stepping up. Alex Rodon overlaps up because Ferreira creates that play. And next thing you know, your other forwards comes running in and scores on the goal. They will come at you. They come at you from different angles. I think a lot of players would like to play for him.
I would
I
think so.
I don't know that he'll ever get that shot, but I think he deserves consideration. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It just boggles my mind when you look at the trophy haul. When you actually look at his personal trophy haul, it just boggles my mind. Listen, let's talk a little big picture here, because I would say that the Sounders. It's funny because I think the Philadelphia Union and FC Dallas get a lot of credit for their youth development. Seriously, they're looked at as standard bearers when it comes to youth development in Major League Soccer. But the Sounders also have done a very good job in youth development in their time in Major League Soccer, and I don't think they get enough credit for that. But that being said, if the Sounders find themselves in an MLS Cup final and find themselves winning a double next season, obviously CONCACAF Champions Cup, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Club World Cup is actually going to be something that's going to be an every year type of deal. As far as the youth development is concerned, I think you and I are actually kind of okay with the fact that their depth essentially has been youth. But that being said, is it time for the Sounders to go out and actually bring in a top quality DP? I guess you can say the Obafemi Martins or the Clint Dempsey level type of DP.
If one of those guys is available and wants to come here, I think they have to go for it. A lot of it becomes. I generally don't care that MLS is on the different calendar, but I do think it adversely affects their DP signings across the league because of when you can bring a guy in and difference in
Sure.
things like that. So that can adversely affect it. But if there was a guy who wanted to come in and fit that model and was a Martins Dempsey type, and they don't, I would be surprised if they didn't. I mean, they spent $7.5 million for De La Vega. It's not like they're not
Right.
willing to go out and drop some change and make the move. They're not afraid to spend the money when it's right, but they don't throw money at teams like the Chicago Fire and a couple of these teams have done, where they just launched money at DPs and then had it not work.
Sure.
I would love to see a couple of guys like that come here. I
Well,
mean,
the interesting thing was like there was rumor that the Sounders were involved with the U.S. international this summer. There was the Dutch teenage striker that they were linked to, and apparently they had agreed to personal terms, but apparently both clubs couldn't finalize a deal. And then there was towards the end of the window there was the rumor of them flirting with the U.S. international, which actually I think that was Paxton Aronson, that he ended up in Colorado, and I think
it wouldn't
Seattle.
surprise me if that was what it ended up being, because
Yeah,
they do play their cards pretty close.
close.
Yeah, Seattle doesn't leak much on the rumor mill, like out of that office. They play it pretty close to the vest, and that's been the same whether it was Garth or Craig or
Sure.
anybody. I don't think, but absolutely, if there was a chance to go and grab a name
Right.
that could really bring some flair to the attack, I would want to see it as a top tier striker type guy like Martins. I mean,
Right.
just think of how much fun Martins and Dempsey were. Like those guys,
Sure.
that team was,
But they also fit. They also
yeah.
fit. Right. Like it has to be a fit, you would think, right?
Mm.
Because they're not going to bring in a Messi, like one of those type of signings or a Sun Min with LAFC. Like that's not going to be their type of DP. Like when you look at their DP history, their DPs actually fit for what they actually needed, right? So so the interesting thing about it is it's like I would think that striker might be one of those areas. But that being said, it's like in my thought behind this is because Jordan's now at the age 30 year, and he's now starting to it's like literally has not necessarily been able to stay healthy his entire career. And now when you get past the that age 30 milestone, your body's going to continue to break down in a league like Major League Soccer because it's physical. And we don't necessarily know what Danny Musovski is going to be. Great year, but we've only seen it this year, right? So there might be a need right there. But that being said, it almost has to fit the culture of what the Sounders are looking for as a DP target 9.
It is interesting and ironic now that Luis Suarez was one of those guys that was rumored a few years ago. The timing of that. They did drop a 6-game Leagues Cup suspension on him a little while ago this afternoon.
We got to talk about that too, because
that's coming up. That's coming.
That's ridiculous.
Well, he'll never play in the Leagues Cup again.
Yeah,
but if he leaves Miami, he'll never be punished if MLS and Miami don't. But in the big picture, to finish it up, yes, Seattle has to, but they've also shown a willingness to dabble and go for it. But they play their hands so close to the vest, it's hard to see. Aronson would have been similar to a Dempsey type signing, bringing a quality American attacker back from Europe. Dempsey had a bigger name, and gave them what they asked for. But. I mean, I'm not sure who I would want to see them bring in from that player pool that would give them and be worth that kind of money.
Sargent, maybe.
I was gonna. You beat me by about 2 seconds there. Josh Sargent has Seattle Sounders style and Brian Schmetzer written all over him. Yeah, he's the sort of guy who would just come in here. He could handle the physicality of MLS because he's been playing in the championship. You want to talk about physical, demanding league. English League Championship is just brutal. And so a Josh Sargent in Seattle, I mean, he'd come out in an MLS, he'd score 18, 19 goals.
Oh, without a doubt.
But the World Cup year and the transfer window over the next year and a half throws a monkey wrench in everything, because nobody knows what's going to happen. Whenever you have players that pop at World Cup, suddenly the market gets skewed. Somebody has a hot 4 games, and next thing you know, that changes completely. Those guys change the market. And Seattle and US will be taking the lengthy international break coming up this summer. It's going to be interesting to see where players fit in and want to come in and when they come in. And there has been hints that, MLS might consider sometime in the next
Yep.
cycle, actually pulling off the flip of schedules.
Which, I mean, that would be ideal. That would absolutely be
There,
ideal.
there are a lot of things, given that MLS is growing into a more internationally successful league. Teams
Mhm.
being competitive in Club World Cup and really competing for signing players,
Correct.
right? The franchise values, the monetary elements of DP players and stuff make it, and you don't want to just be a retirement league or a team that players eventually come to, like some of the second tier leagues are in Europe. You don't, those, you want to be a destination league, not a end of your career league. You want guys being willing to come a
Right.
little earlier,
And at this,
and that's gonna be hard to do.
and I would say at the same time, raising the bar when it comes to American youth development as well too. Because at the same time, here's the rub with that though. Because if the money gets better, and I mean, like, let's just say this, the salary cap increases, and we're not including DP signings, right? What's going to end up happening is you're going to get a lot more foreign players into the league, which, from a talent standpoint, that's great because defenses are going to get better, and we probably have a league that's going to be even, right? But the problem is there's not going to be a lot of room for American players at that point, just because of the talent discrepancy between what we're developing as far as American youth and what actually other countries are doing. The gap would be so wide that we're going to see teams with rosters that aren't going to feature a lot of American players.
Right.
Yeah, that's a big concern of mine. But all right, let's move on, because I do want to talk a little bit about Pedro. You brought him up a couple times. He absolutely had a phenomenal League Cup tournament, and everything is trending in the right direction. But you had some concerns with him playing on the left side, correct?
Originally, I mean, we didn't necessarily think like that was where we were going to see him. He was a right side attacking player last year a bunch. Remember watching him at the end of the season, being fairly, when he was trending better, the later part of his first season in Seattle. You had Morris on the left, he was on the right. They float him out to the left, especially with Jordan out, and then he scores that Puskás goal. And the touch on that goal wasn't a fluke; that was just art.
Mm-hmm.
And we've just seen him develop, but also again, Seattle has been willing to, he's got probably like a 5-year deal, so they're trying to get, adapting to MLS is hard.
Sure,
It is.
I would agree.
It is. It is like the travel is different, the field condition, the field that you're.
Yep.
You're gonna go from playing in 70-degree weather to 20-degree weather in the same week in November. If you play
Correct.
San Diego and New York in November, you're going to be playing in the sunshine and warm weather. And then if you go play New York in November, it can be brutally cold. I know, like Boston, New York in November, right? And that's not even like over the course of the season, the English league has this happen, right? So it's slow and steady, and then it tilts back by the end of the season. It's good. This is like within just games you're playing all the time, and the time zone shifts are really hard on players. The lengthier travel times are hard on players. The field turf in a lot of places are hard on players to adjust to. It is a physical, fast-paced style league. You can't play soft. It's got a lot of league championship sort of physicality and pace, and it doesn't suffer softness well if you come in and you just try and finesse your way into joining the league. You gotta punch back, and I think a lot of guys struggle those first 6, 8, 10 games, and some work their way through it, and we're starting to see that with De La Vega, and a lot of guys find themselves going back on loan to Norwich, or something very quickly. Right?
That's funny. Yeah. Well, the interesting thing was, like, last year, there was a built-in excuse because he came in, he was dealing with injuries, but he was also he was also coming in as a foreign player. So now all of a sudden you're in a different country, different language, you're in a different surrounding, and I just would assume that it's going to take time for him to adjust, right? And I thought that was the case in year one, and I think I remember having the conversation with you, okay, fine, year one was year one, and what he did was what he did, but you would expect now in his second season, having all that experience so far, and now coming into a second season, you understand exactly what's being asked of you. You know exactly where you stand. You know exactly what your role is. There should probably be no excuses in that second season. And I would probably assume that you've been absolutely pleasantly surprised with this play. Because he's actually looking like the $7 million player that he was signed up to be.
Nobody was surprised he got player of the tournament if you watch the whole tournament.
Yeah,
like he was very, very good. We keep coming back to that goal, but just the look of joy and really like he had when he did that, where it was like he just knew, like, all right, people, I'm worth it. Like, when he got that. I think that he's adjusted. He's figured out his game in the Sounder system. The patience of the organization in general.
I don't think the organization really had much choice, though, right? He's a
no. They put
player.
too much money into it. They can't afford to, because they would have had to sell him at a lot. Like that would have been at a big loss. So having to, but they also are willing to. Which is always better. But I just feel like Pedro de la Vega has a ceiling with Seattle that we haven't seen yet.
I like the idea. I like the idea of him on the left because I actually because not only does he have the pace to skin a defender and put himself in a good position, but he can also cut in on his right foot and put the ball in the back of the net. You know what I mean?
It's working there. So
it's working. Yeah,
it's working. So results matter. And he's just done it. And Brian trusts him there, which is a big part of it, which is interesting because that's kind of gets us to where it has to be something in training, because that's very much a Preki-like quality. If you look at Preki's game a couple of years ago, and who mostly runs training, Preki. So you got to figure that there's definitely an influence in the game and an understanding because of the complementary nature of their styles of play. Preki and him are very much just left and right footed versions of the same guy. And you saw that, Preki would float out on the wing, cut in. Next thing you know, he was launching something with his left foot from the top of the box, and it was dangerous. De La Vega has that same sort of, cutback quality that, and then you launch that kind of diagonal thing across the box to the far post, and right in there, there's a goalie looking up and seeing the ball in the back of his net.
And the interesting thing is, like, not only does it work, but on the right side as well too, the emergence of Paul Rothrock has also now turned this entire front four into something that I think I might go on a limb. But that being said, when you look at attacks in the Western Conference, the consistency in which Seattle attacks now, and they're dangerous from both wings.
The way he pounced on the ball for that third goal, because that was just sort of a lazy, the Miami defense just kind of like the outside.
And it wasn't. And by the way, the pass was the pass from Roldan was intended for Ferreira, but it was put behind him, and Rothrock just ate up space. It pounced and ate up space and took the ball and scored a goal.
Yeah, Brian's reaction, if you watch the clip of it's hilarious. He's just like, what just happened? Yeah, and it was that was just a moment of a player stepping up and saying, I'm going to do this in this big moment, that big moment sort of thing. It was, he saw something and he took it and he cracked it, and he had no intention of passing the ball once he got it. He was going at the defender and shooting. Like that ball was going on goal come hell or high water, and then he puts it far post. And I think the keeper was trying to cheat at near post, assuming with the defender on his left side like that. And he just snuck it in the far post there on what was a really nice low shot. That's just you can either do that or you can't. And
Yeah.
a player that just takes that moment and individually does it,
Yeah,
you're
well,
gonna
I guess it gets back to the whole De La Vega thing because you brought up an interesting point because you thought we were probably going to see him on the right side, but the emergence of Rothrock has now given stability to that side to the point where now it seems like De La Vega is flourishing on the left side. It's given Seattle something that I don't think a lot of teams in the Western Conference have, which is a consistent attacking four. As a matter of fact, I probably would go on a limb to say they probably have the best attack in the Western Conference right now.
Well, and you also have now a confidence in it, and this gets into our big picture. The biggest challenge that this team could face the rest of this year is a letdown hangover cup, trying to peak for the Leagues Cup, trying to peak for the Club World Cup. They've had to try and like peak multiple times in one season. And then, do you have this letdown? But they do also, they get Miami in 11 days.
Yeah, I'll be
That's
there.
that's not going to be hard to get up for. And then
I'll be there, by the way. I'll be at
oh,
Chase Field for that one. Yeah.
jealous. And then they also have potentially some, depending upon what happens in that Vancouver Portland game, they have the 2 Cascadia Cup games, which can kind of keep them and keep that competitive edge going into that Brian can use to keep them from having that championship hangover, or complacency, or anything like that. If they get a chance to play Portland and Vancouver for the Cascadia Cup in October, that really helps their MLS Cup because it just kind of keeps you going with it. But that Miami game gets us, I think, to that one topic that we inevitably have to talk about.
We have to talk about that because at the end of Leagues Cup, it took me by surprise when I first was seeing it live, and I was kind of like, "What's Luis Suarez doing?" Right? And I'm like, "Wait a second, who's throwing punches now?" And it's like, wait a second, why does he have Obed's hair? Why does he got him in a headlock? Right? What's going on? Why is he throwing punches? And then all of a sudden he spits on an assistant coach, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ! This is from a guy who has been given multiple chances. And if you remember, I think he's bitten a couple guys in the past.
Liverpool sent him to Madrid because after that, even though he did it while playing for Uruguay, Liverpool just decided to part ways. They just decided to let it go. The silence from Miami so far, the fact that it's taken the League Cup or the Leagues Cup and these things a few days to do it, fine. There's a process. Those things I can get. The fact that Miami hasn't done more than just sort of issue a mediocre statement. If Suarez is on the field on the 16th, that can't happen.
Yeah, it's not enough. It's not enough. Right? To suspend him for 6 games for Leagues Cup does absolutely nothing because he's at the end of his career anyways, right?
Correct.
And at the end of the year, if Miami goes out again in the first couple rounds of the MLS Cup playoffs and they don't do it again, chances are pretty good that he's going to retire and Miami's going to go in a different direction anyway, right? And you've accomplished nothing. And the reality is this cannot just be a suspension because it happened in Leagues Cup, so it has to stay in Leagues Cup. Screw all that, right?
This is an MLS event. This is an MLS event.
That's exactly right. It's an MLS event that features the that literally features the, I guess you can say, the glamorous team of Major League Soccer right now, right? They have bent the rules for Miami to be able to field that type of roster to begin with anyways. And now one of your big players does something like this to a point that, like, I hate to say this, you have to make an example. Because if you allow Luis Suarez and Miami to get away with this, you're setting a bad precedent for the rest of the league.
And Miami already is getting. I have a problem that it took him a week to publicly post anything apologizing. That Miami hasn't just on their own issued a club level of discipline. And
why can't the club just suspend him?
Yeah, and I think that does not speak well in the long term for some things regarding what that will do for the club. I believe I want to go back to the red card wedding. All right. So Clint ended up with the more or less lifetime ban from the Open Cup from it, but the Sounders also punished him. Like he took a club punishment for tearing up the red card and stuff. And I can't understand why Miami already hasn't just said it.
You're out for the next two.
Yeah,
At the
yeah,
very least, you're not going to be a part of team activities for the
yeah,
for at least, yeah, exactly.
yeah, because realistically, I can't see a situation where if he's on the field, somebody doesn't do something.
Well, why hasn't this dude gotten his ass kicked already?
Right.
Because he's had a long track record of just seeing red in moments where tensions are high, adrenaline is high, and he can't control himself to a point where I'm surprised that one player somewhere in the world said, "Listen, we're not having that," and just lays him out to where he's like, "Oh, okay, maybe I can't do these type of things."
I mean, do you think that a couple of the Seattle defenders wouldn't just love the moment of him doing a run through the box and just throwing a forearm right to him? There is no way he plays on the 16th, which is in 11 days, in Miami against Seattle, and doesn't get retaliated again. Like, Seattle's not that sort of team, but somebody's going to do something. You just
right. That's what I was going to ask you.
Begging
it's like,
for it.
Do you think Brian Schmetzer is going to stand for that type of thing? Because if somebody retaliates, for a fact the league is going to come down on them.
And that's just it. I don't even necessarily. It's such a weird thing because it's like I don't necessarily think Seattle has those sorts of hotheads, but at the same time, if you've got a shot and he's going up for a ball, if you ever look back to the old days of the NASL and Mike England, when he'd go up for a header, his forearm and stuff was in the back, Suarez would be. Yeah. And I don't even necessarily mean something dirty, like somebody just throws a punch or intentionally trips him, tries to break his leg. I'm not saying that. But they're not going to play delicately against him. And if there was a moment where maybe you could be a little less
nice.
Nice. Yeah, I just can't imagine the temptation to just, it's the 88th minute, you're up by a goal.
I would think that
take one for the team. Yeah, Brian wouldn't call for it. It's not like a pitcher headhunting somebody, but I can't imagine that it would go well.
Like if he's rotating that night and Bell is on the pitch or something like that. You know what I mean? Like he does the dirty work because if Bell gets suspended, Bell gets suspended. You know what I mean? They still got Kim, right? So it's like it is what it is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like the relief pitcher that plunks the guy.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So
you're not necessarily trying to injure him, but you're reminding him.
You're great. Like that shit's not. You're not.
We don't like
you.
Teammates.
That's exactly right.
And you'll never have a chance to retaliate against us because you're at the end of your career. So,
but I think at the end of the day, man, I think it sets a bad precedent. Bad precedents. Like the MLS has bent over backwards for Inter Miami in more ways than one. When it comes to their ownership groups, when it comes to bending the rules for them to bring in players that essentially are DP players that are essentially on non-DP contracts, but let's be honest, they're DP
Inter Miami
players, right?
is going to be simultaneously a glamour team and the villain of the league very soon.
Yeah.
Especially if Suarez isn't punished here. Garber has to show some stones against Beckham and Inter Miami and suspend him from the league for 3 to 5 matches too.
Yeah, exactly. And if that means that
it has to be like a red card for 3-game suspension at least, because he's technically red carded after the match. And correct. I feel like that the league needs to say this was also a league event, and he gets like the 3-game suspension for violent, that sort of thing needs to happen because it was after the match. This is just representing Inter Miami at that point in time and MLS, and I just feel like the temptation to just maybe, be indelicate would be too much. The presence on the field would just be such a negative if he even plays against Seattle in 2 weeks.
I would hope so, and I would hope that Don Garber actually sets the example and actually sets Suarez as an example. Like you're not going to be doing, especially it's a final. Like this wasn't in group play. You know what I mean? Where you could actually suspend him for 3 matches and he might be back for the quarterfinals if Miami gets that far. Or, you get what I'm saying, where, a semifinal final type of deal where you can suspend him, set an example. But that being said, it doesn't necessarily affect the trajectory of League Cup. But that being said, it's like this was a final. This was like their marquee event.
This had
of
a
the
huge
summer.
TV audience.
Exactly.
It had good ratings.
Exactly.
It had good ratings internationally. This was well known. ESPN, like UK commentators were talking about this game. It had a South American audience. You had 70,000 people. It was a glamour event, and then this happens. And if they don't lay the hammer down on it,
you lose credibility. You lose credibility as a league.
And they don't have a lot right now when it comes to that with Miami to begin with. Like they have to, the punishment has to almost exceed the crime in this for it to be credible. But to be honest, if the reality is he shouldn't play again this year.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And if that means he rides off into the sunset, so be it.
What's he going to do? Retire? I mean, that's all you've got.
That's all he's got.
That's all he's got is retire. Yeah.
And by the way, I actually think this league would be better if, to be honest with you, if a dude like Suarez. I was kind of iffy with Suarez coming to Major League Soccer to begin with, anyways. But that being said, dude shows his true colors. And
I was glad Seattle didn't sign him when they were rumored to.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, we are kind of up against it. We have one last topic, and of course, I do want to talk a little bit about the national team, and I'm curious about how you feel about the current status of the national team. Yes, Christian Roldan comes into the national team, but that being said, a lot of big names were left off. A couple. It's understandable. Yunus Musa was making the move. Gio Reyna made the move to Borussia Mönchengladbach. And Yunus made the move to Atalanta via loan. So you can understand Pochettino leaving those two guys back. But Malik Tillman is missing off this one, which is a kind of a peculiar move. They only brought in Flo Balogun because Brian White was hurt. But that being said, it's like a lot of big names are left off this one in favor for their MLS counterparts. And, it's understandable for the Gold Cup, because the U.S. Soccer Federation doesn't even really consider the Gold Cup. They prefer the Nations League over the Gold Cup. Okay, fine. But that being said, you would consider that there's only 6 matches between now and the World Cup 2026, and you would think that Pochettino would probably want some of his best players, at least for continuity's sake, to get minutes and to make his final preparations as we get into 2026. But that being said, your thoughts on the roster for this international window?
This is going to be a little harsh, but we are seeing the value of international experience and the pain of the lack of it in our coaching hires.
Yeah.
Pochettino is a fantastic club coach with no international experience as a coach with a national team. And prepping this team is showing that right now. We are seeing exactly what we don't want out of the preparation for it from the coach. Who is his starting 11?
Right.
He doesn't know either 6 games before the World Cup. All intents and purposes, 6 games. I get that he wants to. This is an example of a good name who may eventually be a good national team coach. He's been successful as a club coach, but he's never coached a national team before. And this is when they needed, for the short-term hire that this needed to be a grizzled old veteran coach like Carlos Ancelotti or somebody like that, who comes in, knows it's 18 months, and picks his team and then trains that team for every window from then on, and just picks his team and goes with it. And the fact that he is still experimenting in September, it's like, oh, it's a year. No, it's 6 matches, a couple of windows, and then going, tells me he doesn't know who his team is. And if he doesn't know who his team is now, they don't have time to get together to do it, and they will be out very early in that tournament because they will not be prepared to be a far advanced host nation into a tournament. Yeah, I think that this team has a lot of good players, a lot of good young players. We got all of that, but that doesn't matter. If you can't pick your team and go, you at some point with the national team, especially with the short window and a very targeted hiring point, he needed to pick his 15, 16 guys about 6-8 months ago.
Yeah.
And then they needed to be his 15, 16, 17 guys. And then everybody else is playing for roster spots at the end of the roster. And those
Correct.
are his guys. And if we don't know who those guys are now,
and I thought that was what the
too
Gold
late.
Cup was for. That's what I
Yes.
thought the Gold Cup was
Yep.
for, right? Because if you go back to Nations League, and even some of those windows before that, the bulk of the guys that you would think were going to be on the World Cup roster were in camp. But that being said, I think there was also I also think over those camps, the guys that he brought in from Europe, maybe he didn't like what he saw as far as hustle, as far as heart, determination, whatever the case may be, because now all of a sudden he's showing the flag for Major League Soccer. And what's interesting about this thing is, like, you hear from different commentators on YouTube and some of these other former national team guys, and it's like, listen, man, this isn't a Pochettino thing. Flying the flag for Major League Soccer. Berhalter did the exact same thing. Klinsmann did it, although I think Klinsmann didn't have a choice because a lot of those guys came back to Major League Soccer at the end of their careers, right? So,
and then he called them out for it and then picked them anyway.
Yeah, well, for sure. But I mean, it's like at that time, it was like those were his European-based players,
right?
And they came back to me. He had no choice, right? So it was what it was. But that being said, it's like a part of me thinks that by the October window, the reality is Pochettino has put his name and his career on the line with the U.S. men's national team, and even he has to know that. Granted, yes, Major League Soccer competes at a certain level, but it's not nearly even remotely close to that of England, Germany, Spain, Italy, right? It's not on the same level, and we have some of the best players playing. Some of our best players are playing in those leagues, and you would a part of me still thinks that come October, those guys will be in camp because at the end of the day, the last thing Pochettino and his career can withstand is getting grouped in the 2026 World Cup. Like, I don't think he can afford it.
No. And the reality is, he'll never get another national team gig. He'll go back to the club game and just do fine, but he'll never get another World Cup opportunity if this way it plays out. And I certainly hope you're right that in October we see that, but I don't have the confidence in him at this point in time. How do I feel about it was your question? What do I think is the state of it?
Yeah.
I think we're in for a very disappointing 26 based upon where we're preparing right now.
And
what's interesting, I think that at the end of 22, at the end of the World Cup in Qatar, I felt very differently. And in the 3 years since, I've seen a team do nothing but step backwards. This was a team that was the best job in the world. In December of 2022, that was the best job in the world. You could have had almost anybody because they only had a 3-year window. They had a definable endpoint. Yeah. They could come in. Nike or somebody would have financed that job. You could have gotten some big names, and they've done nothing. U.S. soccer's dysfunction has done nothing but bring this backwards. The culture of the players is bickering with alums of the program. There is nothing that should give anybody confidence that this is going to go well. Right. I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. I want to be surprised.
It's funny though. It's like out of the 3 nations that are hosting, like if you ask me the team that's most likely to be grouped, it's Canada. Yeah. Because Canada just doesn't have the depth.
Right.
Right. And what's interesting about Jesse Marsch is, like, when you look at his career, he's always started jobs off with a bang, but eventually they flame out.
Right.
And Canada, what's funny is he started his Canada tenure off with a bang, getting to a semifinal of Copa America. And then we were told that he was going to win the Gold Cup. And then they end up losing in kind of a humiliating fashion. And it is what it is, and they might not even have Alphonso Davies for the World Cup, depending on how quick his knee can heal up. But that being said, Mexico, which between 2021 and 2023 was one of the worst 3-year stretches for the Mexican national team. And now all of a sudden they've been stabilized with Javier Aguirre.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, the team that actually has the most streak is the U.S. men's national team, because you're right. They have, like, their margin for error is actually kind of zero, because they can also be grouped, but they also have the talent where, if you ask me, like, which of those 3 teams has the potential to do something special, it's also the United States, because their talent should suggest otherwise. And again, these guys are professional players. You don't have to tell them much to get them motivated. It's a World Cup on home soil. It's a World Cup on home soil. Right?
We are very capable of seeing somebody like, we'll just say Pulisic.
Yeah.
Pulisic have the tournament of his life, prime of his career, playing at home, playing for Milan, all that pedigree coming. And if Pulisic is the player we always want him to be, and he has the tournament of his life, U.S. could overcome a lot of those things, because a guy can those sorts of guys can carry a club through a couple of matches, through leadership and some individual talent, and then the guys around him just are lifted by that. I don't think that we're prone to getting blown out by anybody, but at the same time, I just feel like it's going to be an extreme. We're either going to be a quarterfinalist playing for the semifinals like 2002, or it's going to be 1998 and
or 2006
all over again. And it's going to be one of those two things. And coming out of the Qatar World Cup, I thought, man, this is great. They could hire somebody, 3 years, 3-year window. You could grab a big name with experience. You could pay for it.
They wasted 8 months only to rehire Greg Berhalter. Right? U.S. Soccer fumbled the bag by bringing back Greg. And this was the crazy thing, is this actual window, this cycle was an exciting cycle, really, if you think about it, because in the middle of it, you had Copa America. We were hosting Copa America again.
I think the best success we had was when Hudson was the interim coach.
BJ Callahan?
Well, Hudson was also Alan Hudson's kid was also the interim coach for one of those two. Yeah, and Callahan. The interim coaches who just kind of came in and went with it have had more success than the hires.
And the interesting thing was, like, this, you're absolutely right, because coming out of Qatar 2022, even losing to Netherlands, okay, fine, but when you looked at the roster, like, every single roster always had a group of those third cycle guys. Like, this was the first roster where it was nothing but first cycle guys. You know what I mean? Like, really, let's keep it real. Like, 2022
that looks like a promising group.
Right. And this was supposed to be the second cycle. And when you go through the second cycles of quote unquote golden generations, that's usually the cycle where they actually have the highest upside. Like, I remember Belgium in 2014. It was their second cycle with Kevin De Bruyne, Romelu Lukaku, and they had an unbelievable run to the semifinals in 2014 in Brazil. Right. It's usually the second cycle where you find, like, the high, because you're getting these players to typically right at the peak of their powers. And when I looked at this cycle, I'm like, shit, the benchmark is Copa America 2024, because we're hosting it. And oh, by the way, it's a great tournament for us to actually see if we've learned some lessons from Qatar 2022, and then we get grouped.
No, I am very pessimistic about our chances in 2026 on home soil, because I don't know what team's going to show up.
Right.
If like, as you said, if that second cycle team still comes together, and and if a guy like Pulisic steps up and really leads, that'll be great. But I'm not getting a sense of that, because we don't know who the team is.
Right. I'm wondering two things before we close this out. Here's the two things that I'm wondering. Number one, does Pochettino really know this player pool, right? Because you would think that he would have multiple coaches that handle the domestic and also the European side, and then he himself would actually be traveling to Europe and getting to know some of his players and calling some of his players. Like, I understand he wasn't hired to streamline the youth process to the national team, and I know he wasn't hired for dual nationals. He was hired to take this golden generation into the 2026 World Cup, and now here we are, essentially 6 games before the World Cup, and he has we have no idea who the starting 11 is going to be. But the other thing that I worry about is whether someone in U.S. soccer is whispering in his ear. You know what I mean?
I don't think this is turning out the way they had hoped signing a name like him would be, because if it was you're starting to see it in how testy is in pressers. You're starting to see some of those signs that are reddish flags. And my biggest concern when he was hired wasn't that he couldn't evaluate talent and do tactics and all of that. It was that he had no national teams are different to coach experience. And we didn't have a margin for error. And here it is a year.
Yeah, essentially.
And are we any better sense of who than men's national team is? You need to have a sense of who that core is. And you can look at there is a player pool of very quality players all over the place. Got guys playing in England, Italy, like you said. There is no reason to not have a talented 15 or 16 player core that can't go out and make a run at something special next year.
Correct.
And we don't know who they are or who he wants to or what it will be, other than when we look at it and think who it should be.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But I don't know that is who it's going to be. And that bothers me so much. It bothers me so much.
I totally
right now, I am very, I would almost like to see them make the short-term change like Brazil just did for Ancelotti or somebody like that. Like, go get us a guy out of retirement who's 70, who's coached 3 World Cups, and have him take over for these last 6 matches, pick his team and go. I'm seriously.
Are you suggesting Bruce Arena?
No, I'm suggesting a move like Brazil made.
Right.
The internet. A Carlos Ancelotti, somebody who is very much like that. Like, I am
very, very pragmatic and dogmatic, and
he looks at the roster, picks about 15, 16 guys, tells everybody else, this is my team, and he plays them for 6, 8 games in those windows and just goes with it. Because if you don't decide at some point, you don't have a team.
Right.
Yeah, you can't still be just juggling players this close to the World Cup and not.
I agree. And by the way, if the worst happens in the summer of 2026 and we get grouped at a home World Cup like Qatar in 2022, Matt Crocker, Cindy Parlow-Cone, and all of those MLS yes men that make up the U.S. Soccer Federation have to go.
Yep.
Something direct like that, the shakeup, the nepotism, all the shit that happens with inside U.S. soccer, that has to be cleaned out. If we get embarrassed on home soil, the entire executive branch of U.S. soccer has to go.
I'm going to use as an example the other national team last year in the Olympics with the women briefly. Emma picked her team, and she stuck with that team.
Yep.
And a lot of people are like, aren't you rotating? She goes, no, I need them to suffer together.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and that team rolled into the quarterfinal, semifinal, and gold medal match and just kicked butt because they knew that they were that squad. And there was plenty of players that were out there that people were like, why aren't they in? It's like she picked her team and then she made them a team.
Yeah.
And you have to do that at the national team level too.
Yeah.
And he's not done that.
And you're right. What's funny is that, like, now that I think about it, when I go back to 2002, shit, you can even go to 98 really if you really want to. 94 and 90 were just different beasts altogether. But you can even say that even Bora Milutinovic actually picked his team as far back as 91 before the 91 World Cup, 94 World Cup. But that being said, every single national team head coach had his core of his team, World Cup team, solidified by mid-cycle. And the only thing
qualifying helps so much in those, though, too.
For sure.
The lack of qualifying is hard.
Yeah.
Qualifying, especially, all of the playing Mexico in the Dos a Cero matches and things like that, galvanized a core of players together in a way that this team hasn't been able to do. And I do think that there is a talented team there to be picked. But why hasn't it been picked already?
Yeah. And I guarantee you the team that heads into the 2030 World Cup will be vastly different than the one that's heading into the 2026 World Cup. But that's going to do it for us. Jeff, I want to say thank you for stepping by, man. Listen, it's always fun to talk Sounders football and U.S. men's national
I do want to show one thing to the camera before.
All right. What do you got?
Because, all right, so they keep talking about the 5 cups that have been won at Lumen Field. 5 MLS era cups, because the 6th team, also coached by Brian 20 years ago, won the USL title at that same stadium on penalties against Richmond Kickers. That team is 6-0 at those in 20 years.
Let's go back. So how many, like in the history since 1974, how many finals or how many cup matches have Seattle played on home soil in Seattle? I
can tell you right now, the 95 and 96 teams that won the cup won them at Memorial Stadium.
Okay.
The NESL team lost both of their Soccer Bowl appearances to the Cosmos on neutral sites.
Okay. Gotcha.
The 90s team won 2 titles. The aughts era team with Brian in 5 and 7 won titles at Lumen and at Starfire.
Okay. Counts.
So technically, they are 9-0.
9-0.
9-0 at home, Memorial Stadium, Starfire, Lumen Field in finals.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
9-0.
I still don't know why Brian Schmetzer hasn't been named head coach of the U.S. men's national team.
We would know who his starting 11 is.
We would know exactly who his starting 11 is. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us, Jeff. Thank you for stopping by tonight. Thanks for having me on. It's always a blast having you on, man. That's going to do it for me. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons, and we will be back tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Coverage starts for the U.S. men's national team live stream versus South Korea. Yeah, I got high hopes. I do. I'm a U.S. men's national team fan.
I hope so. I'm in the hope.
Into it, but
I'm in the hopes, but I don't believe. I hope.
South Korea is a pretty good team.
Yeah.
You guys have a great night, guys. You guys have a great night.
Rusted goalposts under fading skies. Tattered flags waving dreams in our eyes. The crowds roar like a storm on the wind. We're the underdogs fighting again. I believe that we will win. Through the sweat and the fire within, we rise up when the skies grow dim. I believe that we will win. Mud on our boots, steel in our veins. Feel
Thanks, man.